It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray posted a statement on Instagram on Monday as rumors swirl about his relationship with the team, saying, quote, "I play this game for the love of it, my teammates, everyone that has helped me get to this position and to win championships. All of this nonsense is not what I'm about." He goes on to say, "Love or hate me, but I'm going to continue to grow and get better." This came a day after sources told ESPN's Chris Mortensen that Murray is considered self-centered, immature, and as someone who points fingers. Murray recently scrubbed anything to do with the Cardinals from his social media pages. The Cardinals did the same on their social media shortly after. Major League Baseball's opening day continues to be in jeopardy as the MLB lockout continues ahead of the 2022 season as the league and players union has failed to reach a new CBA. ESPN reported today pitchers and catchers were supposed to report. It's day 11 of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The U.S. is third in gold medals with 7, also third in total medals with 26 behind Norway and Germany. College football, Luke Fickell agreed to a new contract with Cincinnati on Monday that'll pay him $5 million per year through 2028 after a season in which the Bearcats were the first group of 5 team to make the college football playoff and earned an invitation to the Big 12. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning and welcome in on this Tuesday to 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock today. Lucas Panzica is making it happen behind the scenes. We got a lot to discuss, a lot on the docket, and phone calls to take if you want to jump in. 615-737-1045. You can do that if you like. 615-737-1045. That's the number. So, officially off-season mode. We've got some college basketball stuff on the menu today as well, but there's a conversation happening, and maybe it's just based on what my timeline looks like. But I've seen several articles today in the wake of the news in the AFC South that the Colts plan to cut or try and trade, preferably, Carson Wentz off of their football team. I think this is a fascinating story because of the way that we make fun of the Houston Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and now the Colts, who just completely mismanaged the whole situation. Completely and utterly mismanaged the whole quarterback situation, not just in this last offseason with Carson Wentz and missing the playoffs and a disastrous final 2 games. When you talk about a team like Tennessee, for example, a lot of you guys want to have the conversation about, all right, how can you possibly move on from the quarterback, from the incumbent quarterback here, Ryan Tannehill? I present to you the Indianapolis Colts, who are having a legitimate crisis as far as the quarterback is concerned, given the fact that they invested so much draft capital into this guy and got next to nothing out of it. A mid-round draft pick in 2022, but remember that it turned into a first-round draft pick that now the Philadelphia Eagles have. I believe they have 3 in the first round this year. The way that the Colts botched this thing, and that they're already ready to move on from him, which, by the way, not to, get self-involved, but wasn't that the exact same thing we were saying as a show after the regular season ended? After Indianapolis got just smoked by the Jacksonville Jaguars. After they, on the field, in the last 2 games, with embarrassing losses at home to the Las Vegas Raiders, and then on the road against the Jags, were we not saying, choking dogs, get them out of here? Carson Wentz needs to be released or they need to find a way out of it. I don't care about $15 million in dead cap. 15 is not 57, just to kind of bring it back to a local tie. And now people are talking about Carson Wentz, people that I respect, people on the internet whose work that I respect. I'm reading this morning from my own employer, one of them, A2ZSports.com. Written by Zach Reagan this morning, why Carson Wentz would be an option for the Tennessee Titans. No. There's more details there, and we'll discuss some of that. Bob Kravitz, longtime Indianapolis sports columnist. He's at The Athletic now. Bob's going to join us later on in the show to talk about what is happening in Indy, because when we think of dysfunction in this division, typically been associated with the Jags and the Texans. I mean, they basically trade places given the week, given that week's news, given the way that they seem to just flounder about. Tennessee Titans been down bad like that before, too, in a much different space nowadays. Indianapolis is not an organization that I think of as outright dysfunctional, even though Jim Irsay has had struggles in his past, and Ryan Grigson, the way that things kind of went up in flames there, and now the punter that Ryan Grigson wanted to get rid of is one of the most powerful people in all of sports media. Pat McAfee with his $150 million FanDuel set at Super Bowl Radio Row. Pat won, by the way. But the Colts are not an organization that I think of as dysfunctional, and yet for the third straight NFL offseason, they don't know who their quarterback is. Not washed Phillip Rivers there to bail them out. He's happy coaching high school football in Alabama. Carson Wentz isn't going to do it. It's just, it didn't go as badly as I thought it might this season, but I have been firmly entrenched in my position since they acquired him for a 2021 third rounder, and now what turned into a 2022 first round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles, that this was a marriage that was doomed for disaster between Wentz and that organization. Not even because of personal stuff. He's just not a good player anymore. Quarterback content and conversation this offseason going to be really interesting, because we're going to get into some stories about Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson as potential trade targets for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady apparently lost in all the Super Bowl hype last week. He's not ruling out retirement. We didn't talk about that at all. And then there's Wentz and what's happening here in the AFC South, where it looks like just a total wasteland. Again, it hasn't felt this bad for at least three of the member organizations in this division for quite some time. And Chris Ballard and Frank Reich, I'm not saying that they're bad at their jobs, but these are two of the most highly regarded individuals in pro football right now. And they've done just a terrible job with the way that they've kind of handled things since Andrew Luck decided that he was tired of getting hit on a regular basis. Carson Wentz, it should not come here to Tennessee. I know that Blaine Bishop was talking about this yesterday right after we wrapped up. In fact, Lucas, I think you have that audio, because that I think, Blaine, very influential, very smart about this stuff, by the way. I'm not here pushing back on Blaine's opinion from a football standpoint. I'm just saying that for what it would cost to trade for him and what other quarterback needy franchises there are out there, I would have to disagree with Blaine's assertion yesterday that Carson Wentz should be the backup here with the Titans.
But how about this? I'm going to throw this out there.
Jameis Winston to the Colts.
No, I could care less about what the Colts do. All I care about in my mind frame is the Titans. Would you bring Carson Wentz in as a backup to Tannehill? Now, and would he do that? Now, I'm sure it's going to be some people out there that love Carson Wentz, but kind of for a rehab, kind of what we did for Tannehill in a backup role. And guess what? If he has to miss a couple games, hey, man, if you go 2 games and you out there throwing bad balls, you're going to lose all sight of, your chances in the NFL ever again. So I would be looking at, and I would be, if I'm the GM, reaching out to his agent saying, hey, is this something that you guys would be interested in?
Logan Woodside's putting on his eye black as we speak.
Yeah.
Logan Woodside's putting on. Did you leave that in there on purpose?
I did not cut that audio. That was Will Poling. But yeah, I pictured Woodside hearing that and then looking in the mirror with like Rocky music playing in the background and putting on eye black as he prepares to take down another opponent.
Indianapolis is going to get rid of this guy. Like there's
Blaine's not talking about it in the context of a trade, by the way.
No, I understand. If he's just out there.
Right.
If he's just out there, listen, they should be consistently finding ways to upgrade the backup quarterback position. Is Carson Wentz substantially an upgrade over Logan Woodside? From a talent standpoint, one would have to imagine. The problem with the Logan Woodside analysis, we have zero sample size, right? We have one preseason of Logan Woodside and a little bit of AAF tape, right? Like there's not, I don't know how to judge Logan Woodside as a backup quarterback other than he keeps just mowing down. There's a graveyard, right? It's like Myles Garrett's Halloween prank where he had a bunch of tombstones in his front yard for all the quarterbacks he sacked. Logan Woodside has that for the amount of backup quarterbacks that he's run through here in Tennessee. But if you're asking me, I mean, it's almost the devil you know type of situation. I don't want anything to do with that guy on this roster because more than anything, among a bunch of different reasons that the Colts are going to jettison this dude via trade, outright release, or otherwise, is this. When the writing was on the wall for the Colts this season, with everything to play for, their season on the line, right? The final two games against the Raiders at home and on the road against the stinky Jacksonville Jaguars. He played his worst football of the season. If you are asking somebody like that for the same reason, and Blaine understands this on a much deeper level than I do, but Blaine brought up something to me yesterday that I think is really important about the discourse around these quarterbacks. They tell you who they are all the time. It's just how much are you trying to make yourself feel better about what they could be? Blaine was one of the only people this offseason, or rather this past training camp, hammering the idea that for the amount of interceptions that Ryan Tannehill was throwing just at that time, this was a legitimate conversation. Tannehill's throwing a lot of interceptions. Is this something to be concerned about? And we all just kind of wrote it off, myself included, as clear and obvious defensive improvement. That part ended up being so. But Ryan Tannehill and his performance as early as training camp, there were signs there that this was going to be a more laborious year for Ryan Tannehill as far as the turnovers were concerned. And he turned the ball over at a rate that we haven't seen him do yet as a Titan up until this point. Bunch of different reasons go into that. But we know who Carson Wentz is. Carson Wentz is somebody I want absolutely nothing to do with because for the same reason that we hammered the Colts afterwards, not because, Titans fans hate the Colts, even though, I'm sure that made you feel better for us to hammer them that day, but because in the biggest moment for that organization, he fell flat on his face. And I don't want anything to do with somebody who's got that kind of a proven track record. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation if you like. We're going to talk about a bunch of different interesting quarterback situations this offseason. What's happening with Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, maybe not done, Deshaun Watson, a possibility for the Bucs, and then the Colts and the ripple effects this is going to have this offseason. We haven't even talked about Aaron Rodgers. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Hey, Rocket, what's my mortgage rate? Rocket, when am I closing? Is anyone there? Rockets are really cool, but they don't speak mortgage. You need a home loan expert for that. Get pre-approved for your next mortgage at thehomeloanexpert.com.
So the way that this works is that I have something to get off my chest to start the show. Lucas typically lets me go for longer than he should without much pushback, and then comes in here, not just during the commercial break, to pick off whatever remains of the food that J. Martin Ramon leaves strewn in the studio. By the way, quite a selection for you this morning.
Today's a good day.
As you scavenge. I don't know what they did in here. I know Slay was in here. Slay, who, by the way, I did 3HL yesterday. I do a Monday 3HL hit at 5:20, presented by our friends at Buddy Allen Carpa One every Monday. And we devolved quickly into Valentine's Day discussion. Slay had this whole spiel about men don't get enough days, like Mother's Day and Valentine's Day and different days that are associated with the opposite sex, but men don't get enough days to themselves, which I thought was a hilarious opinion and one that I am not willing to join him on at all. No. I'm sorry. You're alone on that. If you want to lose, fine. I fight for the winning side, Slay. That is not a winning argument to make. But anyway, he had the audacity, because Ron Slay, we had thought about having him on today. Now, Slay will join us on Friday, which is a good time to have Ron Slay in your life. But he had the audacity to come on here, or when I was a guest on his show, and say that we don't have him on enough. Lucas, we tried to put Slay on the radio today. What did he tell you?
We did. He said, can we do Wednesday? It's a pretty loaded day for Ron Slay. Tuesdays typically are. He's on the morning show every day. He does his hour-long hit in Knoxville with our sister station, The Sports Animal, every Tuesday. And then, of course, he's on for 3 hours of 3HL every day. So Slay, by his own volition, asked us if we could do Wednesday instead.
Now, as somebody who is just overexposed, like, I feel his pain, all right? Like, I'm, this is not any kind of a brag. I'm just doing a lot. I'm probably doing too much. Slay has the presence of mind to be like, yeah, you know what? Reel it back a little bit. Like, the car at some point has to have a roof.
Sometimes it has a roof.
At some point. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't want to take from the mystique of the car without the roof. We want to preserve the image. All right? But to disrespect me when I'm on his show and say that we don't ask him on enough when that day he had turned down an appearance, it's not something that I can stomach. Anyway, there's a system to how this show works, is my larger point. And Lucas came in here as he was picking off all of the food left by Slay and Ramon and Jason, said to me, I think you're off base about your Wentz take. Now, you let me go 25 minutes into the start of the show before kind of stopping me on something. Why do you disagree with me about Carson Wentz?
Well, your argument battling back to the idea that Blaine Briscia brought up of bringing him in as a backup, if he's released from the Colts, right? Not giving up draft capital. Nobody would be in favor of that, I don't think.
Correct.
But you bring up his worst play coming in the biggest moments, right? At
Correct.
the end of the season. Now, was that not the case for Ryan Tannehill late season? The Titans starting quarterback, his worst play of the season came in the biggest moment of the season in the playoffs.
Spot on.
So to bring in a backup quarterback as you look for a potential upgrade over Logan Woodside, someone that could possibly push Ryan Tannehill, who is entrenched as your starter in 2022, who can you think of as the best backup quarterback situation in the league? Like, what's the first thing that pops in your mind?
That's a great question.
There's not many good ones.
I mean, it would probably be, where is Andy Dalton right now?
He was in Chicago.
He's in Chicago.
Right.
Dalton would probably be the best situation.
That's fair. Dalton in Chicago, and then you got Nick Foles sitting on that roster too. So
well, there is the backup wonder,
right?
The king of all the backups,
slinging it with the threes.
Yeah, maybe Gardner Minshew in Philadelphia is something that you bring up, but not some. There's no great answer, right?
Would Carson Wentz, a career starter, a former MVP candidate, not put the Titans in one of the best backup quarterback situations in the NFL if he is indeed the backup to Ryan Tannehill?
It would. I don't know the answer to that. This is and I'm not saying that like the Titans will know, right? If Carson Wentz represents a better option than Logan Woodside, then so be it. You will find ways to try and upgrade the quarterback position. They've shown they're open to trying to unseat Logan Woodside every offseason, right?
They've tried.
He's the Undertaker. Like, he's peeling them off one by one. And none of us know what he can do. It's a very, I mean, not that it's been hugely fortunate, in fact, given Ryan Tannehill's previous track record in Miami, that he has been as durable as he has here in Tennessee in the second iteration of his career as an NFL quarterback. Woodside, I have no sample size.
Exactly. And we poke a lot of fun at Carson Wentz, and for good reason. And he only threw 7 interceptions.
No. Don't do that to me.
You got to let me finish. He only threw 7 picks, but they all came in crippling, soul-crushing moments. Every single one of them. But you take the guy that threw 27 and 7 touchdowns over the guy that's barely ever played an NFL snap. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Nobody's asking for Carson Wentz to compete for the starting spot.
No, but people are. People are. I've got people in the chat, and I know that, like the internet, what we get while we're doing the show and what's in my Twitter mentions and all these things, I know that's not like the best sample size of what real life opinion is. And again, it only matters what the organization thinks, not what any of us think, myself included, right? This is completely an organizational decision. They will try and upgrade the backup quarterback as they see fit. But as soon as you bring him here, it becomes a sideshow. You have no, distractions, however silly you might think they are and however non-threat or not a threat you might think Carson Wentz to be, there will be a conversation around Carson Wentz and Ryan Tannehill, especially given what happened to Ryan Tannehill. I'm not saying that that's bad for Tannehill. They would do well to find somebody to push him. But what I am saying to you is if the person that pushes him in that job is Carson Wentz, then all is lost. All is lost anyway. Like, I'm trying to, I don't want to be the Colts if I'm the Titans. I don't want to exist in this just awful quarterback purgatory where outside of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, you have no, you got lucky with Phil Rivers. Because your other options were, let's give up a potential first-round pick for Carson Wentz and maybe get some snaps out of Jacoby Brissett. Untenable. Again, cost matters more than anything. The football people will have a more grounded in reality opinion on this than we will, right? This is purely speculation. Carson Wentz remains the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. They have until March 18th to make a decision on him. But if you're asking me if I want that kind of a sideshow, that specific sideshow, right? Like, you can push Ryan Tannehill on his job. I'm not ruling that out. In fact, I think that's the best possible scenario. If you start to see the bones of a contingency plan as soon as this year. However you address the quarterback. All I'm saying is that contingency plan cannot involve the person who may have only thrown 7 actual interceptions this year, but how many times did Carson Wentz get bailed out of just terrible turnovers?
Several. But the point is, because he was asked to be the franchise quarterback for that season, it boils down to who's the better NFL quarterback, Carson Wentz or Logan Woodside. As much fun as it is to make fun of Carson Wentz, how can you make an argument that Logan Woodside is a better option as your starting quarterback in a pinch when your starter is out than Carson Wentz?
I can't. Admittedly, I don't. I have zero basis for Logan Woodside being in any way, shape, or form superior to Carson Wentz. I'm just saying that I don't want Carson Wentz. Like, I think that Carson Wentz is going to cost more than the average backup quarterback would. I mean, pedigree aside, winning football to a degree, right? Like, he won games this year. He did make some plays. There is obviously a talent ceiling greater than, the Josh Johnsons, Logan Woodsides, Trevor Siemian, who's my guy from Notre Dame that had just a rocket launcher. Deshaun Kaiser, zero accuracy on the football. Like, Wentz has a higher talent ceiling than all of those guys. I'm just saying that this is not the place for him. There are too many reasons not to do it. And again, cost, the effectiveness of what this is going to look like. I think that Carson Wentz, if he's available on the market, what's the better option than Carson Wentz? Aren't we going to be talking about teams that are going to be looking at him and saying, all right, we know that we're not good enough to win football games. Hell, the Houston Texans that just need a warm body to occupy their position under center as they try and figure what on earth to do with Deshaun Watson. The Houston Texans represent a better landing spot both for opportunity and for price point for Carson Wentz. 615-737-1045. Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston. These are the kind of guys, Mitch Trubisky. These are the kind of guys that are available right now as unrestricted free agents.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy Two Gloves.
But Lebowski does bring up the fact that Wentz is unvaccinated, which is always going to be a wild card for a player that you need in a big moment. So that is a good argument from Lebowski.
They can't ever say it publicly. Urban Meyer did it, and that was one of the many no-nos that you do because the NFLPA will come for you if you publicly admit to discriminating by vaccination status. But also, it's a competitive disadvantage.
Yes. That is a good argument against.
Do you think that John Robinson and Mike Vrabel want anything to do with a backup quarterback that becomes a competitive disadvantage?
Yeah, that's a very, very
because he's
fair point.
Staunch, right? He's not moving on that, and as is his right. Get him out of here. They went through all kinds of COVID problems this year, particularly on that offense. No. 615-737-1045. Hawk Burns brings up Nathan Peterman, the Peterman, running around in these streets. No thank you on that as well. Corey in Hendersonville is up next on the Zone. What's up, Corey?
Not much, Buck. So as a Titans fan, I think a lot of us would want Indianapolis to try and keep Carson Wentz at all costs, and actually it kind of makes sense because unless you have a surefire 100% plan in place for Wentz's replacement, why do you let him go and take a risk in getting somebody worse than Wentz? I mean, like Panzika said, 27-7 as far as the touchdown to interception ratio. It's not terrible.
There's a great article about 10 reasons why they'll get rid of him by Zach Kiefer, who's one of the more tied-in Colts media members. Thank you for the call, Corey. 615-737-1045. Basically, and I'll run through them just as a brief summary. The larger point on The Athletic, it's a really, really well-written piece. The writing's on the wall is where he starts because you've got Chris Ballard out there publicly not committing to him.
At the time, it was a good idea.
He said at the time.
You only use those words if you regret a decision.
People are like pissed off because they don't consider John Robinson. People tried to discount Mike Vrabel and John Robinson's support of Ryan Tannehill after the fact. You want to see what not supported by your organization looks like? Look up the road, kids. At the time, we felt like it was the right decision.
Soul-crushing thing for Wentz to probably hear.
You know what? To his credit, Ballard is not only a ridiculous person to watch a football game next to in the press box because he is very, very emotive in ways that are laugh out loud funny, but you can't laugh out loud because you're in the press box, and it's a very, very angry NFL executive who's I won't get into it. But anyway, Chris Ballard doesn't want anything to do with him. After giving up the first round, now a first-round pick for him. There is pressure on Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. If your job is on the line, I'm not saying that Jim Irsay doesn't strike me as somebody to do anything, rash as far as the Colts are concerned.
We'll keep it on the field.
Off the field issues notwithstanding, Irsay seems to give people time in those roles. That's a terrible joke by you. Shame on you, really. The pressure is on Reich and Ballard to deliver, right? Indianapolis, Colts fans are pissed. And at some point, that pressure starts to matter. If your job is if Lucas, if you and I, if our jobs are on the line, and for whatever the capacity, whatever the context would be, and you said, what one thing am I willing to risk the thin ice that our jobs are standing on? Carson Wentz is not going to come up as a part of that conversation. Like, in what world are football executives going to be football executives and coaches, realists in the sport, going to look at Carson Wentz and be like, you know what? My job's on the line. I want that guy. No. Carson Wentz takes some of the worst looking sacks of all time, where he just looks like he gets crunched up in ways that are deeply uncomfortable. Wentz is somebody who looks like every time, do you notice when he gets sacked, he falls to his knees first? It's the most tree in the forest type of sack that he takes, where his knees hit the ground first and then he keels over with a 300-pound defensive lineman on top of him. No, I'm not risking my job security on Carson Wentz, nor are they. I mean, sure. He said, as a Titans fan, we'd love to see the Colts keep Carson Wentz. Of course you would. He's terrible. And that's why the general manager is on record publicly saying, at the time, we thought it was in our best interest. Wrong. In fact, now Caleb Farley can probably speak best for Chris Ballard.
Rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
Out of there. Enough with Carson Wentz. And I don't want him in the AFC South anymore either. I don't want to watch Carson Wentz play football anymore. I'm
Titans
done.
fans do.
Sure they do. Sure, but I'm coming at this from a selfish standpoint, because I've seen Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor in 2 games this year. I've seen 2 games of Carson Wentz, and I've seen 2 games of Trevor Lawrence. One was decent. The other one was just outright. It made me sad. I don't want to watch sad AFC South football anymore, just because Titans fans want their division to suck so they can keep winning it. It's terrible. 615-737-1045. We haven't even talked about the other interesting quarterback situations right now, with Kyler Murray being a brat on social media after somebody got in Chris Mortensen's ear on ESPN and said that he was basically petulant. And this is what Chris Mortensen has been reporting from the jump on Carson Wentz, as he said on the Super Bowl pregame show prior on ESPN's coverage.
Now, for Carson Wentz and the Indianapolis Colts, it looks bleak. Yes, the Colts did not give him support verbally after the season, said that they weren't guaranteeing them anything. Well, right now, it looks bleak, and by March 18th, he'll probably be traded or released. That's when his $15 million of his base salary is guaranteed. So for Carson Wentz and the Colts, it looks like it was a one-year marriage that went wrong.
Out of there, folks. Winners and losers of the football weekend is next. Tuesday edition, off-season edition. We didn't touch on the NBA trade deadline whatsoever, but Ben Simmons is on my television screen right now being introduced as the newest member of the Brooklyn Nets. That Harden thing. We didn't even get the opportunity for him to get fat before the trade deadline. Really disappointed by that. The NBA, other than Ja, like I have no attachment to it this season. I don't know. It's as disconnected from basketball as I've ever been. But the one connection point, having Ja Morant here in the state and as one of the Western Conference's best teams, is enough to keep me engaged with that at the very least. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to do is we're here to open up the circus tent. We're here to do winners and losers of the football weekend. All right. Maybe Ben Simmons down the trap door. Maybe James Harden. Maybe Kyrie Irving, but only half of him because he can't play in half of his team's games this season due to his vaccination status. Winners and losers of the football weekend, 615-737-1045. Jump in if you like. I'm going to start the bidding before we give the floor over to Lucas. Jim Wyatt is the winner of the football weekend. Jim Wyatt, who is the greatest of all time, now working and has been in some capacity for some time with TennesseeTitans.com. Jimmy does a weekly mailbag. I think he does 2 mailbags a week. I think he does one on Tuesday and one on Saturday because he's sick. Jim has a weekly mailbag, and slowly but surely, the mailbag questions have gotten more hostile. Now, a week ago, he took out a member of the local sports media in just dead body fashion, basically alleging that he was the QAnon of quarterback experiences this offseason. Jimmy Wyatt has had enough and sleep deprived, and he's been on the road for 2 weeks. He was with me in Mobile. He went to Vegas for the Pro Bowl. He stayed out west and covered the whole Super Bowl. Hopefully now Jim is taking some time for him, other than eviscerating people in the mailbag. Joe from Olympia, Washington, wrote Jimmy this week. And the first line of this is, I think a lot of fans are wondering if this team is afraid of getting a quarterback that will win them a Super Bowl. Joe Noah in Olympia, Washington is alleging cowardice, and Jim Wyatt has had quite enough of that. Hey, Joe, Mariota was a freshman at Oregon when the Titans entertained the idea of signing Peyton Manning, and Manning chose the Broncos over the Titans. And it's Peyton with an E. I'll be honest, you lost me after that intro. It basically goes on to allege that Peyton Manning was passed over by the Tennessee Titans because of Marcus Mariota's presence on the roster. Like, Jimmy just doesn't have the time for it anymore. And he's taking people out publicly, which makes all of us the winners because every time you click on Jim's mailbag, you're liable to find a dead body in the last couple of weeks.
My winner of the football weekend is Andrew Whitworth, who at 40 years old is a Super Bowl champ. And you talk about riding off into the sunset, retiring from football. The fact that he was playing at as high of a level as he was playing this season at age 40, an offensive lineman, is astounding. He wins the Walter Payton Man of the Year award the Thursday before the Super Bowl, the highest individual honor you can get as an NFL player. And then in his final game of his professional football career, he wins the Super Bowl in his home stadium against his former team, the team that drafted him. You could not write a better script to close out a legendary career. Andrew Whitworth, the winner of the weekend.
The NFL honor speech was really, really cool. And to see the way that people look up to Andrew Whitworth. We'll see if he ends up retiring because he is 40 years old playing offensive line and at a pretty high level against the Bengals in that Super Bowl. Loser of the football weekend, Browns fans. Now, Odell Beckham Jr., he suffered another torn ACL in the Super Bowl. That's devastating for him after all the good work that he had done, all the injuries that he's had to overcome. And, a media environment that doesn't necessarily feel like it appreciated him while he was with the Giants and being misused with the Browns. Browns fans, though, they take no solace in this. Because Odell Beckham Jr., remember when the Browns won the Super Bowl in the offseason? Does everybody remember that?
Which offseason?
Several at this point. In fact, I think it's been since 2019. Every offseason since Browns to the Super Bowl? No, not Browns to the Super Bowl. Odell Beckham Jr., that trade from the New York Giants that was supposed to put them in this conversation. Lovable losers. No more. The Cleveland Browns. And instead, they're watching Odell Beckham Jr. catch the first touchdown pass of the Super Bowl for the Los Angeles Rams, who are paying him, after the crypto money is deducted, about $30K a year to help them win the Super Bowl. Browns fans forever holding L's.
Speaking of lovable losers, Detroit Lions fans are my losers of the weekend. We talk all the time about teams being a quarterback away. The Rams certainly felt that they were a quarterback away. They went and they got their quarterback in Matthew Stafford, acquired him from the Detroit Lions, and now Detroit fans sat back. And now I imagine many of them were rooting for Matthew Stafford to win the Super Bowl, but still had to sit back and watch their franchise quarterback of the last decade plus, who had never won a playoff game during his time in Detroit, win a Super Bowl in his first shot outside of Detroit.
Tough scene.
And now the Lions are not just a quarterback away, they're an everything away. Detroit Lions fans are my losers of the weekend.
Oh, hold the L. Detroit, another loser franchise. Matt Stafford can't win a playoff game in Detroit. He wins 4 straight including the championship. That has to hurt you in your soul. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on winners and losers. It's no longer the football weekend. Now it's just the sports weekend. Football season is officially concluded, our last opportunity to do so. When we come back, we were supposed to have, actually, I'm being flagged down before I tease up what we want to talk about in baseball. Paxton has called in with a winner or a loser of the weekend. What's up, Paxton?
Hey, man. How are you, bud? Appreciate you taking the call, man. So I'm thinking here, easy fix for me. Winner for the Super Bowl weekend is Sean McVay and that organization. I mean, he literally did what, people were afraid to do, and just throw all the chips in one basket, put it all in on the line, and it paid off. I mean, that's wonderful, right? We were going to be talking either about him in a good way for what he did with trading for Matthew Stafford, or talking about him like we are right now. Here's the losers of the weekend. Bengals fan base. The worst fan base I've ever encountered in my entire life. Ever. And I don't know, Buck, I don't know if it's an NFC North thing, because, Steelers fans are terrible, Ravens fans are terrible, and Browns fans are terrible. So maybe it's just their... But I've never met a worse fan base, and we're talking about Patriots, Ravens, Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
They're kings. They're kings. So I want to add that, and I will stop being salty about the Titans not being in the Super Bowl now, man. You have a good one, Buck.
Thanks for the call, Paxton.
3 fan bases taking the L this weekend.
I mean, I think the AFC North, I think he said NFC, but the AFC North is what he means. Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. I just think it's the part of the country that they live in.
Something in the water.
Literally, it's very industrial there. God knows what kind of pollutants you're ingesting in steel country and in Baltimore, Maryland, and all manner of different things. I think it's just their part of the world that makes them so upset. Much like also the AFC East, except for Miami. Miami people just don't care. There's too many things going on to care about the Dolphins and, $100,000 handshakes and things of that nature. When we come back, baseball, pitchers and catchers were supposed to report today. That sport continues to be in a labor lockout. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you why baseball might actually be doing itself a favor. I'm Buck Reising. On this Tuesday, it's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Major League Baseball pitchers and catchers were supposed to report today, according to ESPN MLB insider Jeff Passan, as the MLB's opening day continues to be in jeopardy. The lockout continues ahead of the 2022 season as the league and players union has failed to reach a new CBA. Quick Titans transaction today. The team signed defensive lineman Deshaun Hand. He joined the Titans practice squad in January, entered the NFL as a fourth-round selection by Detroit in the 2018 NFL Draft out of Alabama. It is day 11 of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The U.S. is third in gold medals with 7, also third in total medals with 26, sitting behind Norway and Germany. College football, Luke Fickell agreed to a new contract with Cincinnati on Monday. That'll pay him $5 million per year through 2028. This comes after a season in which the Bearcats were the first Group of 5 team to make the college football playoff and earned an invitation to the Big 12. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 on this Tuesday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on our conversation if you like to. 615-737-1045. Lucas is making it happen. Behind the scenes today, our friend, Madison Blevins of WBIR in Knoxville. She's going to join us because the Vols are hosting number 4 Kentucky at Thompson-Boling Arena tonight. We're going to talk about the basketball game coming up and how Tennessee can avoid another embarrassment against UK like the one that they suffered at Rupp Arena not that long ago. Back to the phone calls in a minute, but I have to bring this up because it just came across my timeline while we were getting ready to come back. This is from Steve Cavendish at the Nashville Banner. Lucas, have you heard of the co-ops?
No.
It's a froze and sandwich bar concept, okay, called the Co-op. It's moving into the old ZA space in Hillsborough Village. I don't know if you've ever been there. I'm going to read. And now I'm unfamiliar with the Co-op, and I don't want to take a local business out, even though it doesn't appear that they're local, but they are coming into our space. This is Cavendish's tweet. Froze and sandwich bar concept called the Co-op is moving into Hillsborough Village, and wow, they may have set a record for the most D-bag entrance to Nashville. I'm going to FCC that up a little bit. Warning, parents of Vanderbilt, this is courtesy of their Instagram. Warning, parents of Vanderbilt students, your daughters will soon be charging mass amounts on your Amex for meals, quote unquote meals, purchased at the Co-op. These monthly amounts most likely will outpace her Lululemon habit. As a thank you, we will do our part to keep her from dating that musician she keeps telling you about. I'm here at our Hillsborough, it goes on, blah, 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 or whatever. When you lead off with your daughters will soon be charging mass amounts on your Amex for quote-unquote meals purchased at the Co-op. It's a great way to introduce yourself to the community.
Trying to be relatable? Is that what that's an attempt of?
It goes on at some length.
Oh, they're going to love this.
We share a building with 2 incredible businesses, and it mentions 2 of the businesses. Nashville staples all around us. We hope to become a staple here as well. What a threesome we are going to be. I haven't been in a threesome since college when my girlfriend invited her friend Steve to join us for fun after some tequila. This is in the professional Instagram bio. It's in their first post. I mean, come on, it goes on. Like, I'm not even reading the more risque parts. I'm just reading the ones that just hit you over the head. What are you shaking? Did I embarrass you on live air?
I'm reading it. I'm looking down.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's so long.
I mean, it just with so many cringy jokes. A lot of unnecessary. I mean, whether you consider the unnecessary, the threesome jokes unnecessary or not. Either way, that caught my attention. Baseball. In a complete pivot from anything that's any kind of risque.
Losers of the weekend.
Losers of the weekend. Well, we do have some people waiting to get in on winners and losers of the weekend. I'll get to how baseball is losing public attention here in just a second. Let's go to Chuck in Clarksville first. Hello, Chuck.
Hey, Buck. Hey, my winner for the weekend has to be Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
You get a Super Bowl win, and then you still make it in time for the birth of your son. So how can that be any better winner than that? My loser of the week has to be 50 Cent. I mean, you think you got this great intro coming in on the Super Bowl halftime and get made a meme out of it as being now a meme about inflation, about being bigger than you were 20 years ago.
It's a tough scene. Thank you for the call, Chuck. We did bring up there's an inflation joke that I can make all over the place. I'm sure it's not original at this point, but yeah, 50 got hit by inflation big time. His visage of him hanging upside down, very puffy at the Super Bowl halftime. That's going to live. In fact, I have it saved. I have it saved as a meme that I'm going to use. I haven't figured out the appropriate spot just yet, but yes. Loser 50 Cent. Baseball. Pitchers and catchers were supposed to have reported today. Now, normally, that's the next question after football season, right? When do pitchers and catchers report? The NFL, actually, by extending its season by a week, made that a little more pressing, right? Because it was supposed to happen on a much quicker turnaround. We're talking, 2 days removed from the Super Bowl. You would have baseball in your life, not this kind of void, sports void. Especially, I think in our part of the country, we're more prone to baseball than the NBA, for example. Now, you're always going to follow your university, whether it's Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama. There's some good teams in the SEC this year, so maybe you're gravitating towards college basketball because March is right around the corner, but baseball is supposed to be happening right now. This lockout that they have been overseeing, Rob Manfred, as the commissioner of this league, 2.5 months it's lasted. And we've talked about this before. I'm not interested in doing who cares about baseball anymore thing. There's plenty of proud Braves fans whose team is coming off a championship who want to see how they're going to be able to continue to try and compete. And you know that any kind of disruption to the baseball season by baseball purists, if you don't play a full regular season, you're going to be considered a discount champion, right? This was the conversation around the 60-win or the 60-game Los Angeles Dodgers of the COVID season, right? 60 games is a totally mutated sample size in the MLB. There's plenty of baseball fans who will look at that and just be like, no, I don't consider this a real thing. The Braves are a great example of that, right? Look, dead to rights. Almost halfway through their MLB, their World Series winning season. Moves made at the deadline panned out for them in a big way. They transformed themselves. They became champions. Baseball is unique that way. Now, from my standpoint, I'm not a baseball purist. There's plenty of people listening to this who are out there. I completely respect that fact. But as baseball, as you look to try and keep people's attention when you've already blown your first opportunity, right? Because football's done. This is one of the few times when you can catch football scaling down. Now's your opportunity to capitalize on people's attention when there's just not more football to watch. So baseball's already blown that first window because they've been dragging their feet for 2.5 months at this point. But where I think they can still capitalize, and I wonder how people feel about this. Lucas, I don't know how you feel about this. I know you call baseball. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. You're not an overly passionate baseball person, right?
No, I would not characterize myself as that.
Okay. So for us, we're not the target demo. But when I consider wanting to actively try and get myself more engaged with baseball, you know what appeals to me the most? The idea of less games. Less games, more meaningful games, even if that's a mutation on what you associate baseball with, and nobody values their history as a sport more than baseball. In the American, of the American major sports, right? Baseball, basketball, football, hockey, nobody values their history, America's pastime, records that have withstood the test of time through all manner of different generations than baseball. Nobody is more pure or thinks themselves more pure in that way. But what I'm saying is this presents an opportunity for people to be more engaged with your sport because you've limited the inventory. Now, it's not going to be beneficial to them. They're going to lose money on on television contracts. They're setting themselves up to play the fool yet again, and I don't trust Rob Manfred at all to be able to guide them effectively out of this when your commissioner is on record as saying that what did he call the trophy? A hunk of metal?
Something to that effect.
That's a quote from the commissioner of the sport. So, his impact in this, I do not discount because he has been largely incompetent during his tenure. But I do think that there's the opportunity for somebody in baseball to look at this and say, especially off the pandemic season that they had with the Dodgers a couple of years ago, and say, would it not be better if this was the thing that forced our hand to make us shorten our season? Because there's just not the demand for 162 baseball games that there was. At some point, baseball has to come to that realization, yes? I would think so. I don't know what's going to push them in that direction. Less games may mean less money because in the summer you've got teams or you've got networks that, like Bally Sports is a great example of this. Regional networks like Bally Sports that are going to buy up the baseball rights because that programming during the summer is important. You just fill in airtime to a certain extent, and you've got live sports rights. So at least there's some draw. But I think more than anything, baseball has to kind of take a step back from itself at some point, whether it be due to the lockout, because they're going to miss. Spring training is not starting on time, obviously. The regular season, I don't know. I'm not going to be upset, though, if instead of April, we get baseball in July, because I'm not actively seeking it that way. I know, again, we're probably in the minority as a contingent, but I don't know. I don't know if we are. I think there's probably a generational disconnect between people who listen to us live on FM radio, who listen to the podcast, who stream the show digitally. There's probably different opinions from different sects of the audience that way. We'll spend some more time on it because that's the only time baseball makes news, right? If somebody gets popped for PEDs or if somebody botches something like a collective bargaining agreement negotiation. When we come back, Madison Blevins of WBIR is going to join us. We're going to talk about the Vols hosting Kentucky tonight, the number 4 team in the country coming into Knoxville. Madison Blevins will join us to break it down next. If we're playing the Blues, it must mean that there's sadness on the horizon. I don't know if it's sad that Madison Blevins of WBIR in Knoxville is here with us. It doesn't make me feel good. It means that there's probably basketball that we're going to watch later on, though. Vols and the Wildcats at TBA, Thompson Bowling Arena. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. Hello, Mads.
Hello, Buck. I'm just going to be honest with you right now. Lucas, I don't know if you can help this out, but Buck, I'm hearing you 5 seconds behind right now. So this is making my conversation with you a little difficult.
Oh, good. This is gonna be technical difficulties for Mad's first appearance on the show in quite some time. I don't know how to rectify that. I'm muted in the Zoom. I don't know what else I can do. Lucas is just throwing his hands up in the air. We're not problem solvers, Mads. We're just people who speak into microphones. We'll figure it out. There is an awkward delay.
Buck.
This is gonna be terrible.
No, Buck, I just figured it out. All right, we're good. It's because I was listening to you on my laptop, so I was hearing us. Anyways, move on. We can move on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
No,
Thank you.
good.
Thank you for bogging down the show that way. Thank you. This is a strong appearance by Madison Blevins. Basketball, before we get to taking personal shots at each other, basketball is what we are here to talk about. By the way, Mads, if you're not following her on social media, has been doing great breakdowns of both the Lady Vols and the men's games on her Twitter account. Madison 4 Blevins is where you can follow her on social media. Mads, how does Tennessee avoid getting just whooped again against Kentucky after they went to Rupp Arena, where they've had considerable success in the last couple of years and just couldn't find defense for the life of them?
Yeah, that was such a unique game because, yes, Kentucky is good. They lead the SEC in 5 different categories. So they're an extremely talented team. They always are, but they shot lights out. In the first half against Tennessee, they shot 78% on the game. They shot 60%. I mean, you're not going to win many basketball games when you can play like Kentucky does and then you shoot lights out. But first and foremost, Tennessee has to take care of the basketball. Against Kentucky on the road, they turned it over 20 times. But Kentucky executed 32 points off those mistakes. So that's just something Tennessee has to clean up. They have done a good job of it in their last 7 games. Tennessee's on a 7-game SEC win streak since losing to Kentucky. And in those 7 games, they've only turned the ball over on average 12 times. So they are cleaning that up. But that was my first question to Rick Barnes yesterday in media availability was, how do you make sure that you have good ball protection against this Kentucky team that likes to get out and play? Kentucky wants to play fast. They always have. So if you turn the ball over, that's exactly what they want. They want fast break, transition points. So Rick Barnes said, first and foremost, we just have to be smart with the basketball. Now, those turnovers happened in a variety of different ways against Kentucky. It was poor ball spacing. It was not moving off the ball. And I will say that that's something that Tennessee worked on in practice yesterday, was just the simple basics of off-ball screening. They wanted to make sure that they had constant movement in their offense because Kentucky's really good defensively as well. They lead the league with rebounds. So overall, it's going to be a tight-knit game. But I will say this Tennessee team is a lot different than when they played Kentucky about a month ago today, actually. They're a lot different, and they've come together more as a team, as cliche as that sounds. After the loss to Kentucky, Rick Barnes said, I don't really know if I can name a vocal leader in the starting lineup right now. Yesterday, he could name 3 that have stepped up vocally. And so I think that is going to be huge because this Kentucky roster is loaded.
It's really good. Really, really good. Good. I'm looking forward to this game tonight. Madison Blevins of WBIR in Knoxville is here breaking down the Vols and Kentucky with us. Mads, playing college basketball yourself and understanding that some of these things, I talked about it yesterday with the Super Bowl and like it factor and cliches that we use and things about teams coming together and how coaches can challenge you in those moments. I mean, how much of that, and it probably depends on the coach and the team that they're working with in any given year, but how much of that requires just general buy-in from the athletes? Because I feel like somebody like me hears stuff like that and just kind of brushes it off as corny. How much of a tangible effect can a coach challenging you like that have on a team and individuals who need to step up from a leadership standpoint?
Well, I think something that makes Rick Barnes successful and has made him successful in the past is he doesn't coach every player the same. He understands that you can't do that to be a successful head coach at this level. He coaches each player differently, especially his point guards. I mean, he is constantly getting on to Kennedy Chandler and Zakai Ziegler when they turn the ball over, more so than Josiah Jordan-James or even a 2 or 3 guard. He's coaching every player differently because he knows how they're going to respond. But when you're preparing for Kentucky, you have to make sure that this team is locked in on every little thing. And that's what they were doing in practice yesterday. Is Rick Barnes, his practice plan was making sure those little things were taken care of. Like I said, moving off the ball, transition. They worked on full court transition layups just because they're trying to speed up this game as well. But when you look at Kentucky and you see that they have Oscar Tshiebwe, Ty Washington, who may or may not play. He has an ankle injury right now. Severe Wheeler. I mean, all of these players are firing on all cylinders right now. So if Tennessee doesn't have everything in line, Kentucky is going to expose that. And that's exactly what happened at Rupp Arena a month ago.
Well, and they almost got exposed a little bit by Vanderbilt the last time this team played. It got pretty down to the wire. In fact, Zakai Ziegler having, was it 16 off the bench
16.
On Saturday night, I thought he's been one of the more interesting prospects, or players rather, not prospects, to watch kind of develop in real time this season. How much of an asset can he be for Rick Barnes just as a change-up, basically?
To put it quite frankly, Tennessee would be a completely different team right now if they did not have Zakai Ziegler.
Look at you, hot take, Mads.
Such an interesting perspective on the game, on the way he looks at it. He doesn't back down from anyone. He told ESPN after one of their games about a month ago that he feels like he can guard any player in the country. And that's the mindset that you have to have as a freshman, not just bring it offensively, but bringing it defensively. And that's something, he's listed at 5'9". I'm going to say he's like maybe 5'8", because I'm 5'9", and he's don't diminish this man. Don't do it, Mads. But when you come off the bench, Rick Barnes said it yesterday, you have to know that if you're under 6 foot in this league, that you have to bring it defensively. And that's something that they haven't had to coach with Ziegler. He's just bringing it, and now his offense is paying off too. And that's something he does so well, and I think is a huge key in this game, as Tennessee is going to have to create some shots offensively off their defense. So they've got to get a lot of boards. Kentucky leads the SEC in rebounding with 41 rebounds per game. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders right now. So Tennessee has to try and generate more offense with their defense. And a lot of that will be Zakai Ziegler and Kennedy Chandler and what they're able to do in transition.
At Madison Blevins is where you can follow her for all of her enlightened Vols tweets, plus things like Buck begged me to come on his show. So I said, I guess, tune in at 11:20 as we preview number 16 Tennessee versus number 4 Kentucky. I did not beg you. This was forced. I didn't even ask Lucas to text you to come on the show today. I'm
so glad I was finally able to make time to come on your show. I mean, every day it's like constant. I'm like, okay, Buck, I'll give you 20 minutes of my time. What more do you need?
The kind of entitlement, I swear. The kind of entitlement. It's completely disrespectful. Madison Blevins is here with us. All right, so they're on an SEC heater. As you mentioned, they haven't lost since they went down at Kentucky 107-79. This is probably the most difficult stretch of their season, right? Hosting Kentucky, you're at Arkansas, which we just saw an incredible upset over Auburn not too long ago, Missouri, and then hosting right now the number 2 team in the country in the Auburn Tigers. How do you expect them to manage? What one thing do they need to focus on to make sure that they can continue to sustain an SEC play?
Yeah, junior guard Josiah Jordan-James was asked yesterday, is the goal still the same? Right now, Tennessee is 3rd in SEC standings, 2 games behind Auburn, 1 game behind Kentucky. If the Vols were to win tonight, they'd be tied with Kentucky. But like you just mentioned, they still have a grueling schedule to finish out SEC play with 6 games left. But I will say, this team seems to be focused. And that's what Josiah said. He said, our goal is still the same. We want to finish on top, because ultimately, if Tennessee could just finish in the top 4 in SEC standings, then they get a double bye in the SEC tournament, which, as you know, in any situation, in any tournament, any playoff format, that is huge. And so they need to be able to do that and just focus on the things they can control. I mean, point blank, they're struggling inside right now. The last 7 games, they've been outscored in the paint, even against Vandy and different teams. The guards are having to create their offense within the paint right now. So they just lost Olivier Camois, who was their starting forward, replacing Josh Wilkerson. So right now, they're going to have to find some paint presence. And, you know, I asked Rick Barnes one time after they shot 40% from 3 and had 11 threes, if he was concerned. They only had 4 paint points at halftime. And I asked him if he was concerned in that at all. And he was like, it's going to come when we get concerned about that right now. But if we can keep controlling our ball spacing, getting those 3-point shots, then we're going to be successful. But there's going to be a time, like maybe tonight against Kentucky, where you can't live and die by the 3. You have to establish that inside presence. And that's something I'm watching moving forward, that I think if they want to be a top 4 team in this league, they have to finish a little bit better inside than they have been playing.
Madison Blevins, she's an expert, despite, it's difficult for me to acknowledge that live on the air, but she's killing it for WBIR in Knoxville. And no, the cheeseburger that I ate was not at 2 a.m. It was, in fact, at 12 a.m. Pacific time, maybe 2 a.m. Central time. Stay off my Twitter timeline, you troll.
First off, my name is Madison Hawk. I don't know when you're going to call me by the right name.
Oh, no.
Secondly.
Wait, did you change it on air?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. That's not on me.
Okay, I'm glad you follow my content.
I mean, all right. So the artist formerly known as Madison Blevins, now Madison Blevins. I didn't know you changed it on air.
Yeah. We had this conversation. You asked me if I was changing it.
You know, I don't listen to you. I just ask questions to keep the conversation moving. I'm not paying attention. I'm not paying attention to half the things that you're saying. What are you whispering in my ear, Lucas?
That's that same Twitter handle, though, right? Can't lose that blue check mark.
Yes,
no, she didn't say, because she doesn't want to lose the blue check mark. So the marriage doesn't matter there, where the Twitter account matters.
The blue check mark that I got before you got.
Blue check supersedes marriage.
There.
All right. Yeah. Get off my show. You're the best. Thanks for hanging out. Madison Blevins.
All right, guys.
Madison Hawk. Madison Hawk there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mads is killing it down there in Knoxville. And a lot of interesting points brought up about this Tennessee basketball team. You know, Rick Barnes basically spoke to the same effect earlier this week, because I think we were all pretty shocked, given at the time, I mean, this was a month ago, right? When Tennessee went down to Kentucky, we had talked about the way that Tennessee basketball has really been able to hold their own in Rupp Arena over the course of the last couple of years. And they got bum rushed straight up, 107-79. They could not keep Kentucky down. Their field goal percentage was off the charts in that first game. And Rick Barnes spoke to that, how they can prevent that, earlier this week.
Well, again, can't take anything away from Kentucky, but the way we turned the ball over and allowed them to score, 30-some points off turnovers, I mean, you're not going to win basketball games at anywhere doing that. And so we know we're going to have to do a better job of taking care of the basketball. Transition defense is really important. They play as fast as any team in the country, and if you're late getting back and if you're not on edge, they're going to score and score quickly. And so, but we've got to do a much better job taking care of the basketball.
Rick Barnes speaking with the media earlier this week. Tennessee and Kentucky will square off tonight in Knoxville. I mean, just to kind of go back and look through some of the stats, that 20 total turnovers for Tennessee in that game, unacceptable to Kentucky's 12, especially when you're talking about the talent disparity that's there, right? You cannot afford to have those kind of miscues against a team that you're already going to have to be on your game against. They They shot 61.1% from three.
Yeah, and that was because it kind of tailed off towards the end. They were hovering around the 70-80% mark for the majority of that game from three. And Tennessee shot the ball decently well that day, but I don't know that anybody was beating the Cats that day.
No, for all of our criticisms to that point of Tennessee, right? It's the fact that they were so inefficient on offense leading up into that game. Since then, they've kind of leveled out a little bit to go on this. They lost the game at Texas, of course, but as Madison mentioned, this is 7 straight SEC wins thus far. This is clearly a capable team, but I thought I misread that when I was making my notes last night that Kentucky hit over 61% of their three-point shots.
Yeah, I remember listening to Bob and Bert in that game on the Vol Network, and just Bert sounded exasperated every time Kentucky went down and just drilled a shot. They were so locked in on that day. But it's a pivotal moment in Tennessee's season. If they want to close in on a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, maybe a top 2-3 seed in the SEC tournament, I mean, this week, it's right here. Kentucky, Arkansas, and then Missouri, Auburn next week. This next 4-game stretch probably determine those things.
Bob Kessling, by the way, going to join us tomorrow on the radio show. 10:20, Lucas?
10:20, yeah, right out the gate we'll react.
Looking forward to having the voice of the Vols on the radio show tomorrow. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you would like. When we come back, though, there was some audio sent to me of Derrick Henry on Radio Row that we got to talk about because it's as enjoyable a setting as you've seen Derrick in, and the topic of conversation was about the pity he feels for the stiff arm victims that he has. We'll talk about that coming up next. Don't forget free agency rankings. I've got targets that the Titans must be locked on to coming up at noon, and Bob Kravitz will join us as well. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Hey, Rocket, what's my mortgage rate? Rocket, when am I closing? Is anyone there? Rockets are really cool, but they don't speak mortgage. You need a home loan expert for that. Get pre-approved for your next mortgage at thehomeloanexpert.com.
So there's been this clip of Derrick Henry that we didn't have time to get to last week. It got lost in the shuffle on Super Bowl Radio Row out there in Los Angeles. It was a lot of fun, by the way. Appreciate everybody who made it possible for us to head out there, all the great sponsors. Hopefully you guys had as much fun listening to that between 3HL and myself as we did doing it. 615-737-1045. That's the number. Lucas sent me this clip of Derrick Henry with Jim Rome on the set of CBS Sports. Now, Derrick was walking around. He had a stick of Old Spice clutched in each giant hand, as I think was contractually required. Like, I'm pretty sure he had them taped to his hands throughout the course of his time on Radio Row. Had product to shill. So he gets up there with Jim Rome, and as is the case with a lot of these national interviews that, you know, that sports stars do at this time of year, you're having more generalized conversations with somebody like Derrick Henry, who's there on behalf of Old Spice, or, I mean, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel. They were all out there pushing P, for lack of a better term, at the different network sets on Radio Row. So Derrick Henry's up there with Jim Rome, and Jim Rome starts to ask him about the stiff arm. Listen to this exchange.
The art of the stiff arm, dude. What's it feel like when you deliver a perfect stiff arm and you push a guy through the earth?
I always know it's a good one when you hear the crowd go crazy. And then my teammates come up to me and say something, though. But, yeah, I've been doing the stiff arm for a long time. I've always been tall and lanky, had long arms. So when I used to play in Pop Warner and Little League, it just came natural.
Right.
And then as I got older, I started doing more curls and got a little more muscle. I try to use it more effective.
How demoralizing is it? I mean, it'll happen, right? Like, everything's on film. Everybody looks bad sometimes. But how demoralizing is it to the opposition? I just
feel bad because –
do you?
When they play highlights, it's constantly
Do you
on
feel
highlights.
bad?
I feel bad for the dudes. I'm just like, dang.
Do you?
Bro.
Or does it feel awesome?
I mean, it feels awesome in the time. I'm just like, dang, they keep playing it. And I know they probably see it, be like, why do they keep playing this? And it's just like,
because you keep doing it, dude. That's why they keep playing it, because it keeps happening.
Well, I guess it's gonna be more highlights.
You got a good heart, dude, if you actually feel badly for the person you just destroyed.
And in the moment, I don't. But when you keep seeing it playing over again, I know they're tired of it.
That's Derrick Henry.
Who's he talking about?
Audio courtesy of CBS Sports. Why you sent that clip to me, and you seemed like genuinely excited about it. Why'd you get so hyped up about that?
Yeah, we don't see that side of Derrick Henry very often. You know, I think the most kind of that side, we saw that side of him a little bit when he came back, right? His presser coming back from the injury, he was smiling in great spirits, you know, chopping it up with you guys at the facility, but otherwise he's usually pretty toned down. But it was cool to see him kind of letting loose a little bit, going back and forth with Jim Rome.
So wait, is that how low the standard is for Derrick? That all he's got to do is smile and chuckle and make us joke about stiff arms for you to be like, oh my God, he's so likable?
Well, I mean, wouldn't you agree? He opened up a little more in that interview than you typically see in just a podium setting.
Oh, sure. No, I'm not disputing that at all. I think it drives me crazy, right? Because, and I go to less press conferences than I used to, obviously, because a lot of times when they're having media availability, we're on the air. That's why we'll carry the Mike Vrabel press conferences for you live during the season. So I don't go to everything anymore. I'm always their post game, obviously, and you know, you guys know when I'm at practice while we're on the air and when I'm not at practice on the air. You guys seem to figure it out and send me tweets about being in the metaverse of Titans reporting, right? 2 places at once. Sneaky us. But I think with Derrick, the thing, you know, and I'm like this with Tannehill, where they're both, and this is an everlasting complaint of sports media. And we've brought this on ourselves, right? Because we do not create an environment that is conducive for Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill to get loose and chop it up with us, right? Like the press conference settings are not that. But I get so angry when I watch how good he is at these commercials. Like the FedEx commercial with Derrick is great. Or the Old Spice video game commercial that he's got going on. He does well in those Heisman House ads. You know, one of the best things that I've seen as far as sports advertisements are concerned is when football was getting ready to come back throughout the course of the pandemic, right? We lived through the summer of 2020. Football was going to start on time. ESPN's running those ads. It's with Celine Dion. It's all coming back to me now. And you got Derrick Henry belting out lines to Celine Dion on a television commercial, and he's leaning into it. Like, it's not just it drives me crazy because Derek's got a sense of humor, and we don't ever get to see it. Ryan Tannehill drives me insane because he's so intentionally uninteresting, and it benefits these guys none to say anything interesting to local media. But I get FOMO when I see how much fun he's having with Jim Rome. And I'm like, I'll talk to you less if you just have more fun with us. Like, I don't need to talk to you every Thursday, which of course I do because I have to talk about things on a much, much more local level than Jim Rome does. And all Jim Rome's got to do is get up there and let him talk about stiff arms. That's the fun stuff, right? They get the candy. It's like sending your kids to their grandparents' place. They come home all sugared up and passed out, basically. You experienced that clip a lot different than I did because you saw one of your. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Derrick Henry as a Titans fan. Like, I'm not doing what I do with you, to you with the Vols, right? I'm not trying to back Lucas into a corner about being a Titans fan because we're supposed to be a journalistic entity or whatever. But like, is Derrick Henry one of your favorite players? Is that fair?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's no question he's the most enjoyable player to watch.
Why'd you pause? Why'd you think about it? Is that like because there's nothing wrong with being like.
Yeah, I don't know if I think about it in that context.
Okay.
Of having favorite players, especially covering it and
maybe that's a younger
all the
demo.
things we do. Yeah, but no, I mean it's just cool to see that side of him. But who's the first player that comes to mind when you listen to that conversation? That he just feels bad. He just keeps seeing it over and over and over.
Oh, Norman.
Yeah, it's Norman.
Josh Norman.
Right? It's A.J. Bouye, an underrated one, though. Because that 99-yard run is constantly
with the Jags.
On repeat. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was 4 guys.
Yeah, he was
like, it's not just A.J. Bouye that's the focal point of that scorn, right? Josh Norman is on an island out there, and that's a highlight that lives unto eternity.
For a play that didn't count.
No, Mike Vrabel calls it the greatest 6-yard run in NFL history that didn't count. Because there was a penalty on the play.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, what other plays are like that, right? Because, I mean, the 99-yard run for Derrick is going to live on, right? Like, that is going to be a signature moment for an athlete. Like, is there a Preds player that comes to mind when you talk about like signature athletes? Steve McNair had plenty of these, right?
Like signature moments, like specific in-game moments.
Specific in-game moments that you will define that, like, that's going to transcend Derrick Henry's career. Is that 6-yard run with a Josh Norman, by physically picking Josh Norman up, a fully grown man, another professional football player, and throwing him, physically throwing him. It's absurd, and it's one of the things that I'm going to think about Derrick Henry. Just draw the connection with Derrick Henry for the rest of my life.
Well, don't forget turning Earl Thomas into a fullback.
Yeah, but it matters, and that's playoffs, right? So that's going to have a little more juice.
And that was a lot of talking before that game, too.
Well, yeah, because Earl's ridiculous. But also, now, I mean, Earl Thomas can't say anything to anybody because you can't get caught in bed with your brother that way and have your wife pull a gun on you and then continue to talk smack to people. Like, Earl Thomas is it's just such a great story that we didn't spend near enough time covering during the pandemic as Earl Thomas in a precarious situation. 615-737-1045. Well, I'm glad you got to see a little bit of Derrick's personality because he's got it. It's just, press conferences aren't the place for that. When we come back, we're going to get into the list of Titans priority free agents. These are guys not on the team that I think the Tennessee Titans should have a heavy interest in this offseason. I've got a full list of 75. We're not going to do all that. We're going to narrow it down to 10 coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Titans transaction today. The team has signed defensive lineman Deshaun Hand. The former Detroit Lion was drafted in 2018 in the 4th round out of Alabama, joined the Titans via the practice squad later in the season. He did play in the game at the end of the season at Houston. He is now officially on the Titans roster. Also from Adam Schefter, the Minnesota Vikings planning to officially introduce former Rams offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell as their next head coach on Thursday, just days after O'Connell wins Super Bowl 56 with the Los Angeles Rams. College hoops tonight, number 16 Tennessee plays host to 4th-ranked Kentucky in Thompson-Boling Arena. The Vols are riding a 7-game SEC win streak. Their last loss at the Kentucky Wildcats, 107-79, on a day where the Cats shot 68% from the floor in Rupp Arena. Kentucky has won 6 in a row. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Hear the Vol Network coverage right here on The Zone. The Preds are in Bridgestone Arena tonight to host the Washington Capitals as Capitals head coach Peter Laviolette comes back to his former team. At 3rd place in the Central, the Preds have lost back-to-back games since the All-Star break. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour. Welcome in or welcome back if you've been hanging out with us so far today. Happy to have you guys along for the ride, whether you're in the car, streaming us on Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, or even if you're catching us after the fact on the podcast. We're happy to have you guys in today. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. Lucas is here. He's making things happen. Bob Kravitz of The Athletic going to join us in just about 20 minutes from now. So we're looking forward to having Bob shed a little insight on what the hell is happening with Carson Wentz. But in the meantime, I have before me a stack of very cleanly, tightly composed 75 free agents. NFL offseason, full throws. It's what we got right now. The top free agents, according to The Athletic, 75 of them, with a little bit of insight and information about each. Now, I'm not going to give you the full 75, although if you want, you can read it at theathletic.com. I was planning on making my own list because it is that time of year, of course, but Rhett Bryant said that he had this as a hard copy for me, and I was able to cross-reference it with my list last night and come up with the priorities. 10 players who I would like to see the Tennessee Titans involved with in some form or fashion this offseason. Now, where are the positional needs for Tennessee when you talk about roster construction? Well, now it depends on who you ask. I'm sure some of you would put quarterback as a priority. I'm here to tell you that it's not right now. Although maybe you feel a little different. I got the same pangs for higher level quarterback play that you guys did on Sunday night watching the Super Bowl. But regardless, we're not going there yet. We know that they need pass catchers. Julio Jones is 33 years old as of last week. Julio Jones has an expiration point on him. It will not be, I think their plans are to keep him in the fold this season, given that it is, negligible cap savings, about $1 million and change that you would save in cutting Julio Jones before the 2022 season. So let's assume, for the purposes of this conversation, that Julio is in, but you still do need pass catchers. Now, I think the draft class is pretty interesting, but when you look at the number of talented wide receivers that there are right now in the NFL, you could do worse with some of the options that I'm going to present to you. So tight ends and wide receivers, let's consider those priorities 1 and 2. Offensive line, that is critical. Joe Burrow made it to the Super Bowl without one, but ultimately that's what betrayed him. Ryan Tannehill can look a lot better if he's adequately protected, which he was not this year. So you have to decide where you're going to spend your money this year. If we're looking at free agents first and foremost, the draft will come after the fact, and they will be able to fill needs as a result in more detail. But of these 10 players that we're going to look at, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive linemen, almost exclusively, of the 10 players that I selected, and again, these are not players that are current unrestricted free agents for the Tennessee Titans, so I'm not including Harold Landry. Ben Jones is not a part of this discussion. Anthony Firkser is not who I'm looking at. But of the 10 players that I selected as teams that I would like to see prioritized by the Titans this offseason, there's only one defensive player on the list. I don't think that defense, now in all likelihood, how they will do it is that they will address a smaller or a less, spend less money on one position. Defense is likely the easier place to do that, given that you already have talent all over the place on that side of the ball. So watch, this will all fall apart. But for the purposes of just having less needs on defense, there's only one defensive player that I put as a priority for the Tennessee Titans this offseason. That one player on the defensive side of the ball is Stefan Gilmore. Now, he feels like the one that got away. He is also of an advanced age. He is also somebody that had difficulty getting on the field after he was traded from the Patriots to the Panthers during the season last year. But if you asked me, because I think Jack Rabbit, we'll see what happens with Jack Rabbit, all right? He makes a lot of sense as somebody who's probably going to be on the way out the door. We'll see what happens. They could find ways to make his salary more tolerable, but I think if you have a clear and obvious upgrade needed, you have Caleb Farley coming in, you don't necessarily have a pressing need at corner because your top three, in theory, is set. Farley, Fulton, Molden. I still think to have Stefan Gilmore at the age of 32 on a relatively inexpensive deal, if you're constructing one of these all-in teams, right? Titans in the same kind of window that the Rams are. If you asked me, of any of these defensive players on this list, if I needed a corner for a game coming up this week, just as the Titans did on short notice throughout the course of the year, Stefan Gilmore would be the person that I choose to leave my fate to. Now, I think Patrick Peterson is an older corner. He signed a one-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings last offseason. Jack Rabbit got 2 years, $15 million from the Titans. That's probably the same kind of market value that you're talking about for Stefan Gilmore. Not flashy, not new, not sexy, not young player coming off an exciting year, but a talented player who understands the nuances of the position, a veteran player, a player who is going to understand how to operate in this system. I think that Stefan Gilmore should be one of the players prioritized this offseason because it's affordable. It makes sense, right? Finding players at contracts that are of value. It's difficult to do. Plenty of teams overspend in free agency with the intent of just trying to max out the talent and the rest will work itself out. The Rams figured that out late in the season, but it did take some time for them to gel. Von Miller wasn't an instant impact guy when he was traded to the Rams from the Broncos. It took Odell Beckham a little while to work his way into the rotation consistently, and then once they found their footing prior to his second ACL tear, they seemed to really have something. Now, I mean, the talent clearly in this free agent class is at the wide receivers. Devontae Adams will be an unrestricted player this offseason. We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. It's a big domino. I think that Chris Godwin should be somebody that Tennessee looks at. Now, that's not going to come as a small expense. That if he hits the market, he's going to be seeing wide receiver one money, or of this class, he's going to be seeing money comparable with a wide receiver one, given the way that the market's going to go up. There's only valuations out there right now based on previous contracts. Right now, Chris Godwin, the market value projections, courtesy of Spotrac, according to Mickey Ryan, Spot Track. $18.1 million on an average annual salary. It's a ton of money, right? If you're spending that, you're letting somebody go. If that 18.1 it's either Chris Godwin or Harold Landry. Think about it through that context. You're either spending big money for a wide receiver this offseason, you're trusting that process in the draft, which, by the way, John Robinson in a deep wide receiver class waited until day 3, the 4th round, to select Des Fitzpatrick, who famously was slow to get going. My issue with the draft process is that for teams who need instant impact, it is of decidedly less value. You cannot afford the existence of a Des Fitzpatrick on your roster this year. It can't happen. That player has to play. Nick Westbrook-Aquino was a revelation. One, because the draft pick was for a season. We'll see what happens with Dez in years to come. And remember that he does remain on the roster, apparently making progress. Precious little evidence to that effect outside of being forced into action during the regular season. But as you look at the talent in this wide receiver class, Mike Williams is going to be out there. We talked about Godwin and Devontae Adams. Allen Robinson, who has just suffered far longer than anybody should. Allen Robinson should be a player who made $17.98 million on the franchise tag last year. That guy needs to cash in on a long-term deal. Are you willing to pay that to him if it means that you give up a little bit of pass rush? I could totally see a scenario, and again, not reporting this, not just kind of looking at how teams and understanding a little bit how teams manage their financial planning. Your big money contract for a pass rusher, that's already been spent. Bud Dupree got that contract last year. Harold is made so much better by the fact that he's cheap right now. And my understanding of Harold Landry's situation, his objectives this offseason, is to be the highest paid player at his position in his meeting room, whether that be here, whether that be elsewhere, for a franchise who's going to overpay for talent. And Harold's worth a lot of money, but how much of those resources that you've already allocated at one position are you willing to further, expend? Julio Jones gets more expensive in year 2. Maybe that backs you off the idea of a wide receiver in the free agent market. That's where you kind of look further down the list and see some options at the tight end, options that the Titans have played this year. Mike Gesicki, for example, with the Miami Dolphins. It's possible that Mike McDaniel, the new head coach of Miami, may want to keep him. Coming from a system like that utilizes their tight ends, he's clearly a talented player. And by the way, you need somebody whose primary focus at that position is going to be to block. That's what Mike Vrabel and that coaching staff considers the priority of the tight end position. One of the most interesting ones, who should come at a relative value. We'll see what the market bears out. But Titans fans have been perpetually fascinated with somebody like David Njoku, who's an unrestricted free agent this year. And he's one of the tougher ones to project, right? The numbers have been up and down. In fact, when you look at kind of him next to Jonnu Smith, who got $12.5 million from the Patriots last offseason, the production, career-wise, is similar. Now, he did a fair amount of work last year, almost 36 catches, 475 yards, 53 targets, not high volume, right? But again, versatility is something that's of value. Tight end is an interesting position in this draft as well. I think you could do worse to have two positions like those that you clearly and obviously need to address, and there's going to be some value in this coming draft class. But at some point, you need to be able to supplement with proven talent. And David Njoku is somebody who's just interesting enough, versatile enough, and a better option consistently than anything you had on the roster this year, considering the fact that all three of those guys who played meaningful snaps, Ferkser, Swaim, Pruitt, all three of those are also unrestricted free agents this year. 615-737-1045. If you're taking a look at the free agent class, who would you want the Titans to prioritize? We're going to narrow this down Coming up next, Bob Kravitz of The Athletic is also going to join us to talk about Carson Wentz and him potentially being out after a season in Indianapolis based on the reporting right now. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Free agency. We're less than a month away from when teams can start discussing the tampering period. Makes it sound a lot more salacious than it actually is. Welcome back on this Tuesday. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Bob Kravitz of The Athletic going to join us just about, less than 10 minutes from now. Free agency priorities. Positionally, I think, is probably the best place to narrow this down. We've talked about tight ends, wide receivers, offensive linemen, and one corner in particular who I think is worth the Titans' while. But this gets kind of interesting when you look at the percentage of cap that's already allocated per position, right? Or per player, even, just to kind of boil it down. Now, Lucas, I know you're going to, we'll play trivia. This time I won't lose my train of thought as long as you don't ask me about jet lag. Ryan
What'd you have for
Tannehill.
breakfast today?
Why would you do that?
I'm trying to knock you off.
Why would you do that? Now, if I didn't have the chart directly in front of me, then maybe it would happen.
Go ahead.
So rude. You know that Ryan Tannehill's taking up the biggest percentage of their cap next year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the percentage of that is?
The percentage that Ryan Tannehill's taking up
of the Titans' salary.
I'm going to say approximately 20.
18.29. So, ballpark. That's a big number, right? That's the fifth highest salary cap hit in the NFL among quarterbacks. We went through the list for you a couple of weeks ago when this Rodgers BS first started to swirl between Rodgers at the top. Matt Ryan at the top. Rodgers 2, Kirk Cousins 3, Deshaun Watson, ironically enough, 4, Ryan Tannehill 5. 18.29% of the salary cap. Can you name me the players who are in the top 5? So if Tannehill's 1 by almost double the amount, who do you think 2, 3, 4, and 5 are?
For 2022.
For 2022.
Derrick Henry.
Yes.
Julio Jones.
No.
Not Julio Jones.
Not Julio Jones.
Oof. I'm kind of stuck.
It can't be that hard. Who's on a big contract?
Taylor Lewan.
Yes. 2 of 5.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, not Jeffrey Simmons, not AJ, Bud Dupree.
Yep. That's 4.
And Kevin Byard.
That's the top 5. By percentage, Ryan Tannehill, 18.29. And this is of your salary cap space. Again, this is awaiting the jump made official in the salary cap, expected to go up by $25 million. 18.29% of your cap is Tannehill, 9.1 Bud Dupree, whose number goes up significantly. His cap hit, 19.2 next year, after a season where his availability was questionable, right? You understand, coming off the ACL. Kevin Byard, 7.5% of the salary cap. 7.1 is Derrick Henry. And 6.9, nice, is Taylor Lewan to round out the top 5. Julio Jones just missing, just outside at 6.7% of their cap next year. The list goes down. Saffold, Zach Cunningham, if they choose to pick him up, Janoris Jenkins. All three of those players, Saffold, Cunningham, and Jenkins, could not be potentially on the roster this coming season. By the way, I thought it was interesting. Roger Saffold got on Twitter and said he's not retiring. Just out there for anybody who was curious.
They was saying it like somebody was spreading that around.
Well, he's probably, God knows what people are sending Roger, and he's probably getting tagged in 75 different lists of potential cap casualties to watch this offseason and blah, 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 blah. So, I don't know what Roger is seeing that's provoking that kind of response to where he's defiant, right? Not retiring. So, maybe they figure out a way to make the money work. But again, Roger is going to be, he's 34, 33, 34 this coming year. 6.1% of their cap is Roger Saffold. So when you kind of break it down, the way that teams break it down is, all right, how much are you spending by position? Ryan Tannehill is 18.29% of your salary cap. Your quarterback money is spent, and in fact, this season, it's drawing from other positions. What makes the Titans unique is they are one of the few teams who has a running back taking up more than 5% of their salary cap space. That is most teams where they assign their tight end money, right? The decision between the wide receiver money last year was, okay, are you going to pay Corey Davis or are you going to go out and get another wide receiver? Well, you spent that wide receiver money, that assigned money, that banked money as you budget for future seasons. You gave the Corey Davis money to Julio Jones. You gave the Harold Landry money this offseason. You already gave that out to Bud Dupree. Does that affect their ability to re-sign Harold? Do they need to more evenly distribute the money being spent on pass rush elsewhere? Because that's a big number, 19.2 for Bud Dupree. Byard has said publicly that he would restructure. They are going to try and avoid doing that because they don't want another circumstance where they're having to make difficult decisions in future seasons. Because honestly, for those of you who would want them to restructure Ryan Tannehill again, for example, that puts you more on the hook for Tannehill's money again next year when you're actively trying. It's like a loan, right? I mean, they're not taking any less money. You're just moving the money around. But basically what you're doing is you're extending the loan that you have out on the quarterback position and causing you to pay, whatever you call it, an installment in future months that you may have the ability to pay off now, right? At some point, you got to get this money off the books. So for the Tannehill restructure, again, people, not feasible. So when you talk about the tight end money being already spent basically on Taylor, the Harold Landry money, in theory, being spent on Bud Dupree already, okay, so where is your big offseason spend? When you know that Jeffrey Simmons is going to get more expensive, especially if they pick up a fifth-year option. Now, Brett Kern accounting for 1.78% of the salary cap, that's a curious one, right? Brett, by his standards, didn't have the kind of season that he's accustomed to. I don't think anything's going to happen to Brett Kern, but that's a bigger number when Brett Kern counts more against your salary cap than Caleb Farley does. These are the kind of cost-benefit analysis conversations that are being had internally. If you're spending money anywhere this year, I think it has to be on the tight end position. And I still don't think, by the way, that precludes you from taking another one in the draft. 615-737-1045. Jason is in Nashville, up next on 1045 The Zone. Hello, Jason.
Hey, man. Thanks for taking my call, man. I love your show, too.
Thank you.
Well. So I just want to say this. With the Titans, it is what it is right now because, you got all this money that you're going to have to pay Tannehill next year. So the options of trading him is like almost nothing. You're not getting rid of him. So you're going to have to deal with this another year. And then, like you said, all the salary cap that they got eat up. It's kind of like, are you going to build on what you got, or are you going to just go in there next year and just be completely terrible? I don't see them doing it intentionally, but that would be more beneficial if you're going to go another way because now you'll get higher draft picks.
Jason, slow down for me. Are you actively advocating for them to tank?
I mean, it's got to be either or, because the reason what's making me say this is because I'm hearing Titans fans say, I'm tired of this. They let me down, but yet they let you down and they're successful. Whether you want to admit it or not, they're still successful because there's a lot of other teams that would have loved to have been the number one seed. So are you going to – because everybody keeps calling in, let's get rid of Derrick Henry and get what we can get for him, or let's find a way to get rid of Tannehill. If you're wanting to do that, then are you saying you're wanting to rebuild? Because that's basically what you're telling me because you're not trying to add to it. You're trying to just start completely over. You bring somebody like Aaron Rodgers in, that's a whole nother type of quarterback. You're going to have to build around his style of playing. It's not going to be about the run first no more. And plus, then you got to ask, is the coach going to be is that going to be a good chemistry with who you bring in with Mike Vrabel? You got Aaron Rodgers, he likes to call the shots like Peyton Manning did. So it's just a lot of things that you got to take in fact is what I'm saying.
Man, he kept going, even though the music The music was overpowering him. Did you fade him down at the same time as you faded the music up?
Yes, but I respect the mentality to keep trucking.
Hey, you know what? If he's got a point to land and he thinks he's going to land it before the music overtakes him, I respect that.
And I see what he's saying as far as, get rid of Tannehill in a way that is starting over from what's gotten you to this point.
Well, yeah, again, the Tannehill thing is not feasible.
Right.
Without a solution, not outright concrete, but like without a even feasible solution. We don't even have that at this point.
Yeah, it's an irrelevant discussion, which is ironic because it's the discussion that might fuel the next few months.
Henry's different. Henry, they both got 4-year deals prior to the 2020 season, and they will both be in the third year of their 4-year contracts, Tannehill and Henry. Henry, though, is an interesting one because do you believe you can have a conversation, well, we replaced him. The Titans replaced him last year. Not scoring-wise, that's a big part of this, but from a rushing yardage perspective and from the style that they like to win games, they replaced him with much, much less expensive players. I don't know. And this is a conversation being had not just by the Tennessee Titans. I don't think that it's quite as – I don't think you have to veer to extremes, right? It's not either push all in for the Super Bowl or blow it up. In fact, it's pretty uncommon to see a team take that kind of – basically give themselves an ultimatum. All right, we're either doing it this year or we're blowing the thing up. And it's a conversation that's being had not just here in Tennessee, but on a much more real level in Indianapolis, where after 1 year of the Carson Wentz experiment, it sounds like things at the quarterback position, again, for that team is about to get blowed up. Bob Kravitz of The Athletic joins us now here on 104.5 The Zone. Bob, the last time we talked, you were interviewing me about a banana suit for your IU Watt shot story, but I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, that was a Pulitzer Prize winner, wasn't it?
Listen, I felt like it was, but, I'm biased. Bob, so the situation with Wentz, it's fascinating to all of us just in football who are watching this from afar. If the Colts do choose to, through one form or another, move on from Carson Wentz, what does it say about the direction of that organization?
Well, it says they screwed up pretty significantly 1 year ago. I think they would have liked to have brought back Phillip Rivers. Phillip decided to retire and coach high school football down in Mississippi, or in wherever the hell he is.
Hey, Bob, that's our part of the country. That's our part of the country. Alabama.
Wherever.
Alabama, Mississippi, it's the same.
We're all the same. It's true.
It's all the same. It's all the same. Anyway, they took quite a risk. They traded a first and a third rounder. I think it's 50-50 now, and that's not to cop out on an answer, but what are the alternatives?
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo is your best alternative, and I think that he probably is. Is that a reason to eat $15 million and give up more pieces in order to get Garoppolo? And so, the problem is the well has been poisoned against Carson Wentz. And quite frankly, I thought he played reasonably okay up until the last 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks were a cluster. They were just awful. And, the owner clearly doesn't want him back. The coach doesn't want him back. And Chris Ballard is just trying to figure out which end is up.
Well, and Ballard is the one with his name on at the whole press conference after the fact. At the time, we thought it was the right decision, and now that's clearly gone the opposite direction. Bob, we're basically having that same conversation, even though the difference between these two teams, the Titans and the Colts, is the one was the 1 seed in the AFC, and the other missed the playoffs in fairly dramatic fashion. But there's a bit of an existential crisis about the quarterback position here. But it just, again, the alternatives for these two teams are almost non-existent. I keep having this Stafford Goff thing tweeted at me like that is just something that happens every year, and it doesn't exist that way.
Well, if you happen to have first rounders that you don't want to keep, and you've got a quarterback in Jared Goff. I don't have any issue with the Colts not making that Stafford move. It was incredibly expensive. Was it worth it? Yes, they won the Super Bowl, but the Colts didn't have a quarterback that they could throw back at, that they could throw back at Detroit. So I'm not sure that move would have worked anyway. But I think what the last 2 Super Bowls have shown, and I think it's especially important for the Colts to take notice, is that to be great, you've got to take risks, and you've got to take some big swings. And sometimes you're going to miss, but you got to take those. You got to take those chances. And I really think it's incumbent upon Chris Ballard to stop talking about all the cap room he's got and start using some of it.
Well, I guess that's my next point. Bob Kravitz of The Athletic is our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. At B. Kravitz on Twitter is where you can follow him and get all his great work. The Athletic, by the way, well worth your subscription for all the great sports journalism being done there. They've got cap space, right? $51 million, and I understand that they've got some talented players who they're looking at with the intent on signing down the line. But if any team was better equipped to eat the money and make a pretty bold play this offseason, would it not be Indianapolis?
One would think so, but they've been in this position really for the last 2-3 years, where they've been in a really favorable position cap wise, and it's Chris Ballard's philosophy that you build from within, that you draft, you develop, and you re-sign. And quite frankly, I think that's something. That works, but not enough to get you to where you want to go. And I think he's got to take some risks this off season, go out there and get themselves some playmakers on the outside and figure out this quarterback conundrum, because, without your quarterback, you're nowhere.
Bob, before I let you go, is Carson Wentz, based on your season covering him and as you said, playing at a fairly high level until things went nuclear against the Raiders and the Jags, is he still a starting quarterback in the league right now?
I believe he is. I don't know if there were any extenuating circumstances related to his blackout the last 2 weeks. He did have COVID. He was symptomatic. Whether that had any impact at all, I don't know. But I thought, for the most part, he played reasonably well. And he didn't have to be great. All he had to do was be okay, and he was okay. Now, if the Colts want to take that next step, they're probably going to have to upgrade. But right now, I just don't see any great alternatives unless you think Jimmy Garoppolo is a major upgrade. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that he is.
Yeah, I think we're inclined to agree with that. Bob Kravitz of The Athletic. Check him out at B. Kravitz on the social. Bob, I appreciate you doing this short notice. Thanks for the time, man.
Not a problem, guys. Take care.
Bob Kravitz there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Last call for phone calls coming up next. Carson Wentz is a starting quarterback in the NFL, would effectively take him out of the backup quarterback conversation here in Tennessee. We again disagree strongly with Blaine Bishop's assertion that would be a good fit.
You will agree. You will disagree.
Oh, why? You coward? You got to work with him for 2 hours after me? You're going to tap out?
I'm going to die on the hill that Carson Wentz better quarterback than Logan Woodside as a backup option.
I don't know. I think Carson Wentz stinks. Polls are next.
Hey, Rocket, what's my mortgage rate? Rocket, when am I closing? Is anyone there? Rockets are really cool, but they don't speak mortgage. You need a home loan expert for that. Get pre-approved for your next mortgage at thehomeloanexpert.com.
Final segment, Tuesday edition. Thanks, Scott. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. We're not quite done just yet. Got some polls to get to. Blaine and Mickey going to have a great show right after us, and looking forward to watching the Vols host Kentucky tonight. Some good college basketball on the slate. It's good because Tennessee is playing at the same time. Is it 7 Central?
8 Central tonight.
8 Central tonight.
Yeah, Vol Network broadcast right here on the Zone.
I saw the 8 o'clock and assumed that it was Eastern time.
No, I am sorry for our Eastern time friends that have to go through a 9 p.m. tip-off.
Yeah, I don't know how people watch sports in the Eastern time zone. It sounds like a true and utter suffering. I'm going to have to make an interesting decision around primetime then if the Vols are on right when I'm supposed to go on. Anyway, I'm happy that the Vols are playing tonight because they're playing at the very same time that Indiana will host number 15 Wisconsin, and that way when I am miserable because my basketball team is wretched, particularly in Big Ten play, just blew it against Michigan State the other day at home. No, that was on the road. Either way, terrible loss. I can watch the Vols and be made happy about college basketball, especially if they beat Kentucky, because I hate Kentucky. Polls.
Oh, Nelly, this is Keith Jackson talking about college football. It's time to stop the count. The polls have closed and the granddaddy of them all has been tallied with your poll update. Oh, Nelly, talking about Buck Reising Show producer and daily correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. Who are the winners of the weekend? Puka says everyone who experienced the halftime show.
Yeah, halftime show was incredible. Winner of the sports weekend from my worldview is the great Jim Wyatt for just being just an absolute assassin in his mailbag on a regular basis now. Jimmy doesn't work, he doesn't come for your neck often, but when he does, he's going to do it with style and with class. Not quite as heavy-handed as I do it.
Loser of the weekend, 4 Phony says big game Spain.
Oh, Quentin Spain or Eli Apple, who held the bigger L on Sunday in the Super Bowl? Because Quentin Spain, part of the offensive line that gave up the sack that lost the game. Eli Apple getting torched by Cooper Kupp on the final touchdown for the Rams that ended up being their game-winning drive. So both of them not able to cash the checks that their Twitter account was trying to get them out there in these streets, making a lot of noise on social media, and then with no ability to capitalize on that because they're both not very good at professional football.
Blake says no loser bigger than Eli Apple. David says Vernon Hargreaves for costing his team 15 yards despite not being active.
Vernon Hargreaves. I don't think there wasn't a penalty in the game until then, before Vernon Hargreaves ran out on the field. Just so stupid. You should get cut for that. You should get cut on the field on the site of the Super Bowl. What was that? The second quarter? Cut.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
Kenneth says A.J. Brown because he had to see a star receiver targeted heavily in the fourth quarter of a playoff game.
Yeah, I'm going to write about that for this week. I think that's going to come out on Friday. I'm looking at A.J. Brown's fourth quarter targets and how infrequently they target him. When it comes down to the clutch, it's going to make you sad.
Most interesting quarterback situation, Carson Wentz in Indy, Kyler Murray in Arizona, or the Bucs in general. 47% say it's the Kyler Murray situation. 33% say the Bucs. 20% Carson Wentz.
Yeah, we didn't get into the Bucs situation because that reporting has been interesting from Rappaport and Pelissero.
Or Kyler Murray, for that matter.
Of the NFL Network. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we didn't get to Brady Kyler Murray because I don't know how much I care about somebody telling Chris Mortensen that he's Murray's basically a petulant child, and then him having to come out after letting his social media sit out there for a week like a petulant child and be like, no, I'm not about this. What did he say? Nonsense.
Yes,
you are the nonsense, Kyler.
Could baseball be doing itself a favor by playing less games in 2022 as the lockout continues on the day where pitchers and catchers were supposed to report? 67% believe yes.
I think they do themselves such a disservice by there being so much quantity to their games that people have no real reason to become invested until the season gets later and you're figuring out wild card positioning and things like that. But baseball, they already blew it on the first window because we have this small gap in what's happening between football and everything else. Today, not even 3 days after the Super Bowl, pitchers and catchers were supposed to have reported, and instead, the 2.5-month lockout of the MLB continues.
Is Derrick Henry a good commercial actor? 77% say yes. We haven't even talked about the stiff-arming Deion Sanders commercial in the Super Bowl. He's done quite well with the cartoon commercials. The Old Spice one where he's carrying Rams players on the treadmill, and then the one from Sunday night.
He doesn't even have a line in the Deion Sanders stiff arm commercial. He's just a grunt.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
We didn't even talk about any Super Bowl commercials. Did you come away with a favorite?
I didn't like. There wasn't anything that
the
did
Sopranos
it for me.
one that didn't get
all
you.
right, you know what? That made me look up from my phone. Right. That's basically how I judge these things. No, for real. That's how I judge these things. Like, if you can get me to look up from my cell phone during a commercial break. Because the Budweiser one was terrible. Even the Clydesdale one sucked this year.
Mm-hmm. For me, it was the Talking Babies, E-Trade.
Yeah, the E-Trade, it was a callback.
I was giggling pretty hard.
Well, you being the bar for comedy, I don't think it's necessarily that high.
Hey, now.
Hey.
Those are the polls.
That would have been a good opportunity. Anyway. Blaine and Mickey is going to come up next. Don't forget, Bob Kessling tomorrow will recap the Vols and Kentucky taking place tonight right here on 104.5 The Zone, your home for the Vol Network. See y'all.